Oh, it is so pretty.
Hey. It's not your crown. Leave it alone. It's Mrs. Universe's crown. And we're going to tell more of her story in just a minute.
Would you like to try it on?
I want a picture of this.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to share some country wisdom with you.
King Solomon had a thing or two to say about the path to wisdom. In Proverbs 4, he wrote, "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure."
Join us now for Country Wisdom. I was at the Amazing Facts big dedication for their new property and buildings and everything, and I was sitting in the A row. And I call the A row the front row, right? That's where you want to be impressed. And you and your husband were there, met you for the first time, and you told me you're Mrs. Universe. And I go, oh, wow, somehow we've got to talk to you. So thank you for coming today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Janice, I know, has been coveting your
Oh
crown
my goodness.
already.
Jim makes me wear a cowboy hat. I ought to have a crown. Every woman deserves a crown. I'm going to put that in my contract next time.
But oh, go ahead.
Yeah, all he told me was that we get to interview Mrs. Universe. And all I knew was, oh great, she's going to be taller and thinner, and I'm going to look so dumpy sitting next to her. And then I have to sit next to such a beautiful crown. How much does that weigh?
It's not light. Yeah. After a few minutes, I want to take
I'll
it
bet
off.
you have to have perfect posture.
You do, and you have to get your head just right so it doesn't slide off the back.
So how did you get it? Or am I jumping ahead?
Yeah,
Well, actually, I'd like to hear a little bit beforehand, because are you a Christian?
I am. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. I am 5th generation and a 4th generation vegetarian. That usually comes up at mealtime. So it's been in the family a long time. My grandmother was riding in the wagon with her grandfather. And in those days, paper was scarce, and he saw something in the ditch. This was in Canada. And he said, "Gladys, jump down there and get that." It was the signs of the times. And that's how the family became Adventist.
Wow. Now, a crown and Seventh-day Adventist doesn't seem like that fits together too
Right?
much.
Yeah, they don't really mesh. I got a random message in my Facebook inbox, and I thought, is this even legit? Because, who does that? But I checked it out, and it was legit, and the lady that was the director was Jewish, because I thought, oh, for sure, these are always on the weekend, because they are, and this would never work, But it was...
You got an invitation to be in a pageant?
Be in the pageant.
I have never gotten a Facebook message inviting me to be in a pageant.
I'm just scared to say anything today, because whatever I say to you will probably be wrong.
So it was Sunday through Thursday, and so I thought, well, let me at least explore that. So I called, and he said, well, there's a pageant coach in Los Angeles. He was on the East Coast. So I called this lady, and I said, I have just one question for you, because I have neither time, interest, or money for a pageant. I did one in college, which is a long time ago. Would this help my speaking career? And she said, absolutely. I said, okay, I'm in. That was the only reason I did it, because I had enough going on without that.
So give us a backstory, though. What was your Christian life like before this time?
When I was working in San Francisco in the late 90s, I had an office that had a lot of Jesuit priests as patients, because we looked out over the University of San Francisco.
We should probably say what it is you do in real life.
I do teeth. I clean teeth for a living. I'm an oral janitor.
An oral janitor.
And so I asked my dad, what's a Jesuit? I've never heard of that. And so he sent me a film by James Arabito, History of the Jesuits. And my coworker was asking, what is it too? So I thought, well, I should give her The Great Controversy. But I've never read the book. So I thought, if she wants to have a conversation about it, I should probably read it first. Well, by the time I got to the last third, I was rather indignant. How come I've been going to church my whole life and I've never heard a sermon on this? on the signs of the second coming, not just the signs, but the actual second coming, what happens to the earth. It was just mind-blowing to me. And I became very convicted by the time I got into the last quarter, and I knew I had been standing on the fence, and I was trying to keep one foot in the world and one foot in heaven. You know, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. And so I knew I needed to get off the fence, and so I got on my knees and I said, Lord, whatever it is in my life, I want you to forgive me. And every time I was convicted of something specific, I got on my knees because I was home by myself, you know, when I was feeling this way and reading. And the ultimate result was this incredible feeling of joy. Now, joy is different than happiness, and you can't really explain it. It's something that I have found you experience. But when you have all of God's forgiveness, all of your sins forgiven, you experience this incredible joy, this lightness. And that was when I turned things around.
So you, at that moment, you really had the reality of becoming a real Christian.
Yes.
Following Jesus, falling in love with Jesus.
And I decided to do my own study. So I actually set aside everything I had been taught growing up and did my own research. I had just a Bible and a Strong's Concordance. I didn't use anything else. And I did my own word search, my own topic search, and just, I learned so much.
Would you mind taking just a short detour, explain concordance for folks who may not know?
So a lot of what Jesus said was very simple, so it would be hard to find a word that you could look up. Like water is not a simple word, so you could look that up, but there's a whole lot of texts that use the word water. Well, one day I was at work, for example, and the coworker in the upstairs, it was a 2-story, she was the doctor's wife, and she knew I kept the Sabbath, and that somehow really bothered her. I was walking past her desk one day, she kept the books, and she blurted out, like it was not even like a conversation we'd been having. She said, "I'm so glad we're saved by grace." And I'm like, okay. So I thought, what does that actually mean, to be saved by grace? So I went home and I looked it up in the concordance. And in the New Testament, every time that word is used, it's, I believe, pronounced charis. I may be wrong, but that's close. It's the same definition except for once. And that definition is not unmerited favor. That's what I grew up being told, that grace is unmerited favor. Now, it's true that it's unmerited.
In that we can't earn it ourselves.
Yes, and it's true that it's a favor, okay? But the actual definition means so much more, because if you plug in unmerited favor into a lot of these scriptures, they make no sense. It doesn't make any sense. But if you plug in the real true definition, which means the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life, that is the meaning of grace. So God's transforming power on the heart, and that's what people see in our lives. That's a word of power. When you plug that in, it makes these scriptures come alive. Like Paul, when he said, "Your grace is sufficient for me, for your strength is made perfect in weakness." Well, if you say your unmerited favor is sufficient for me, for your strength is perfect in weakness, do you see it doesn't work? But if you say your divine influence upon my heart and its reflection in the life is sufficient and it's made perfect, that makes sense. And that was when I became really excited about what God's word has in there. So many treasures.
Did you talk with her about that later on?
No, I didn't. I didn't end up staying on the job.
Were you aware that God has a special message to the world? It's meant for the final generations of those living on earth. I believe that is the time in which we are living. If that's the case, what is the message about, and where do we find it? Naturally, we find this message in the Bible, God's love letter to us. I have a pamphlet called God's Last Message that will give you some great information. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org and request offer 113, God's Last Message, for your free copy.
No one could ever calculate the amount of sacrifice that went into the making of this great nation, the gains of so many because of the loss of the precious few. As a child in school, I sang America the Beautiful, God bless America. We started every day by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. But a lot has changed. Biblical predictions are taking shape at an amazing pace. If you're about my age, you know that this is not the country we all grew up in. It seems like this nation is rushing toward a cliff with no possibility of return. When I became a Christian, I began studying biblical prophecy, last day events. I found a book called The Great Controversy that was amazing in its clarity. If you'd like a copy, log on to our website.
To order your free copy of The Great Controversy, go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org. Click on the Store tab and order your copy today.
So your personal relationship grew. Take us on a little further now.
Well, dental hygiene is a very repetitive job. And so you do the same thing every hour. They have a very high bar for letting students in to the program. So you get a lot of very intelligent, at that time, women, now it's more mixed, doing a job that is very repetitive. And after 1 year, I was burnt out. I was crying on the job every day. I'd roll around to what we call the 12 o'clock position, so I was right behind their head, and my tears would roll off the mask, and I'd wipe them up with the gauze on their forehead, and I just felt completely hopeless. This was before, this was before I had read The Great Controversy. But the depression would come back periodically, and after I'd read The Great Controversy, I had dipped into this severe depression so bad that I remember coming to the front door one day after work, and I stood there, and I knew there was some correlation between what was in my hand and the door, but I couldn't figure it out. It took me several minutes to realize the keys went in the door. And then I just went in the house, and I actually laid on the floor, curled up in a ball, and just cried. I was just so depressed.
You're in big trouble.
Yeah, it was not a good time. So I ended up ending my marriage, and I moved to Sacramento. I was attending Doug Batchelor's church just prior to that, and I decided to take a sabbatical. And so I was on a non-Christian dating site, and there was somebody that was looking for a helper on a magician's show on cruise ships. Yeah, he was looking for a girlfriend, but also, to be in the show. He needed both. So we talked for a little bit, and I said, I really don't want to live on cruise ships because I want a house and a dog and a garden. That's what I want. And he's like, well, I understand, But later I decided that my birthday, which was coming up, I would be 40. And I said, I think this is a good time to take a cruise. Would you host me at the different ports? And he said, sure. So by the end of the week, he asked me to join him. We hit it off pretty well. And I did that for 18 months. And
you got sawed in half in some of those things?
Sawed in 9. 9.
9.
I was known as the girl in the box, whether it was the shadow box or the cut in 9 or whatever box. There are lots of boxes in a magic show. So I did that for a while, and it wasn't fulfilling. When you're in
getting sawed in pieces,
wasn't
pieces, your life goal.
It wasn't. No. And everyone's contract is changing at a different time, and so you don't really have established friendships. People are always leaving. They'd be there one day and tell you they're leaving the next. And so I decided I needed to get off of cruise ships. But it was during that time that in my email I'd seen a promotion for Dr. Nedley's Depression: The Way Out. Mm-hmm. Now, I was taking medication, which helped me live a normal life instead of dipping really low. I was just kind of, sort of emotionless. It was,
yes,
you're functional, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. You don't really enjoy life. And I didn't want to exist like that, because that's what it is. You're just existing. Mm-hmm. And so I read the book and I realized in order to implement these things, especially the circadian rhythm, because with the entertainment, you're doing really late night shows and then getting up late.
And sleeping all morning.
Yeah, it messes you up. And the food was okay, but it wasn't the best. When Princess was bought by Carnival, the next day the food changed. There was a lot of variety, and then it wasn't after that. So it's not what you would think. It's not what it's cracked up to be. So I got off ships, and I put a legal-sized sheet of paper on my mirror, and one by one I would add what I needed to change. The first was taking B12, and then getting my sleep-wake cycle, and that helped naturally correct the depression. So,
Where was God in all this?
You know, that's a good question. When I was on the ship, I would always make sure that I could attend church whenever I was at port on Sabbath. So I would write ahead of time to the pastor in that port if I could find an email and say, would you meet me? And, you know.
So that you could get a ride to the church.
Yes. So in Vancouver, I had gone to the Vancouver Adventist Church, and some random person in the lobby was very on fire about the book Jabez, the Prayer of Jabez,
Yes.
Bruce Wilkinson. And so I read that. He insisted that I should read the book. Well, several months later, I was on the Baltic cruise, the Baltic Run, and I was, you know, you're bored because when you're not doing the show, you don't have anything to do. So I went to the library and was looking for something to read, and there was that book.
On board the ship.
On board the ship. And so I took it and read it, and I had not been talking to God since my divorce because I was really, really angry about the end of my marriage. And so I was kind of like a Jonah, you know, going out to sea.
Literally going, escaping on a ship.
Yes, yes. And I said, oh, the other entertainer that was right next door to us had said to me that she was in a lot of emotional pain, and we had started to get to know each other. And so I said a prayer for her. I wasn't going to pray for myself because I was still mad. And I prayed for her, and the next morning she had been pacing back and forth in front of my door, and she was so excited.
Waiting for you to wake up?
Yes, waiting for me to get up. And when I came out the door, she said, Jeannie, that was my stage name. She goes, I've been waiting to talk to you. You know the pain that I've had? And I'm like, yeah, no. She said, I've had ulcers. She didn't tell me about that, but they were gone for the first time. God had healed her physically. And so, yeah, she said, tell me about God. Because she grew up in Russia. And she, you know, they weren't allowed to have Bibles and so on. And so I did a little witnessing for her, and begrudgingly. But God has his way of bringing us back, because my mom always continually prayed for me. So parents are a wonderful thing if they're praying. Mom's prayers are very, very special.
Amen.
And powerful.
You know, no one could ever calculate the amount of sacrifice that went into the making of this great nation, the gains of so many because of the loss of the precious few. You know, as a child in school, I sang America the Beautiful, God bless America. We started every day by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. But a lot has changed. Biblical predictions are taking shape at an amazing pace. If you're about my age, you know that this is not the country we all grew up in. It seems like this nation is rushing toward a cliff with no possibility of return. When I became a Christian, I began studying biblical prophecy, last day events. I found a book called The Great Controversy that was amazing in its clarity. If you'd like a copy, log on to our website.
To order your free copy of The Great Controversy, go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org. Click on the Store tab and order your copy today.
Were you aware that God has a special message to the world? It's meant for the final generations of those living on earth. I believe that is the time in which we are living. If that's the case, what is the message about, and where do we find it? Naturally, we find this message in the Bible, God's love letter to us. I have a pamphlet called God's Last Message that will give you some great information. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org and request offer 113, God's Last Message, for your free copy.
You know the impact of Christ's message. It heals, it transforms. Do you have the eye for a great post, the heart for a kind comment, the skill to build community?
Talking Donkey International is looking for passionate volunteers, from seasoned content creators to newcomers.
We are a Christian community dedicated to sharing Christ's love.
This is a real opportunity to turn your time into ministry. We've got about 8 minutes, unfortunately, now to get you to Mrs. Universe and what you're doing now and everything else.
All right, I'll make it short. So I got this random message in my Facebook inbox inviting me, and I was in the pageant, and I have certain friends that don't want me to tell you this, but it is true. I didn't win on the stage. There was a young lady that was about 20, she was 20, and she'd grown up in a lot of foster homes, and she didn't handle her role well. She didn't do anything that fulfilled the contract, and so they took the crown from her.
Okay. So you had been first runner-up?
So yes, I was the one with the next highest score. I wasn't first, but I was the next highest score. And so he called me, one of the directors, and he said, how would you like to go to Africa as Mrs. Universe? I had gotten the trip arranged in January, and I did the pageant in the middle of the year. And it was a continuing education class, and I was one of the speakers in Africa. So I did that, and it has opened so many doors. It wasn't something that when I got the call, I walked around the kitchen saying, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? Because I don't see how this fits in. But it has enabled me to talk to people that normally I wouldn't have been able to, because I would just be a nobody.
Because the title opens doors.
It does, yeah.
Piques people's interest.
Yes, people that don't have the perspective of eternity that we do place value on this, which I'm leveraging, I want the eternal crown. That's the crown that I want. This has been God's way of getting me into His work in a way that's reaching a lot of people. When I was in Africa, one of the other speakers was talking about the statistics of Kenya dentistry, and he said there's one dentist for every 110,000 people. So I went to him after and I said, I think I can help. Do you know anybody in politics? He said, no. And I said, well, do you know anybody that's anybody? He said, the president of the Kenya Dental Association. So I met with him before I left, and he's looking over my materials. I had some visual aids that I'd taken with me. There's 57 diseases associated with gum disease. And then I have trademarked the brushing method that I use, which is...
You and I had talked briefly when we first met, and you had one of those. I was amazed at all the things that gums affect in your body.
Yeah.
Just share briefly a couple of those.
The most interesting was the one on fertility. They cleaned teeth on both men and women, and people that were infertile before a thorough deep cleaning became fertile after. The bacteria in your mouth have a very high clotting factor. If you ever cut your tongue or anything, it doesn't bleed for very long. And if you get that into your bloodstream, it's going to clog things up. And they've found oral bacteria in the clots of stroke and heart attack victims. There's a direct correlation.
I didn't know that.
Wow, no.
Yeah, that was a fascinating one. There's less research done on the ones that are you don't hear about, because the ones that get a lot of research done are the ones that they have actually, substantiated. They can cause stroke, heart attack, preterm babies, low birth weight, and diabetes.
I've got to ask now, again, we're getting a little shorter time. I've been wondering the whole time after you and I met, and it'll sound stupid, but what are the differences, plural, between Miss Universe and Mrs. Universe?
Well, one of them is very obvious.
Yes, yeah, that's why I said differences.
Well, of course, you're married, and it's a different circuit owned by different people. The Miss Universe pageant hasn't had an interest in developing Mrs. Division, and so someone else has picked up on that. I think that they're going to go into the direction of international. They asked me to be the crown holder for the initial. It's called Queen at Large. And I looked at the contract. There's a lot of responsibilities that would be time consuming, and I feel like I'm on the path for God's work, and that's where I need to put my time and energy, and I declined.
What does that path on God's work look like?
I'm doing mission trips twice a year to Kenya. I leave for Nepal in 3 weeks, and I feel that I feel a very strong drive to change the way the world brushes and to use my mission clinics in coordination with evangelistic crusades. So a lot of people come to dental clinics because it's not something they usually have help in their community for, whatever 1040 window nation you're talking about, or city. And so they'll come out by the droves. Why not leverage that and have an evangelistic crusade start at the same time as the dental clinic, the free clinic? And so that's what I'm endeavoring to do. I need the right connections to get this working.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm doing all the talking. I've got so many questions, but
That's okay. I'll correct you if you're wrong.
oh, okay. What's the changes you've experienced in your life in God from that early time to right now?
I'm so glad you asked. That's a good question. I have become extremely dependent. My favorite phrase this year, 2023, is God is the best boss ever. To let Him have the reins of your life is an exciting experience. It was really scary for me to do that. When I get on my knees.
I like being in control.
Yeah, me too.
No.
And that was the real challenge when I had read The Great Controversy, was to give up every corner of my life. But that has been the most exciting thing. Now, I came back from Africa with just 1 day of work a week because I was doing a lot of temp work, and that changed. And so I'm just totally reliant on God, and I actually have chosen not to worry about it. And it's His, it's in His court. He's going to take care of it, and He has. As soon as I was done with the clinic, literally that evening, we were at a dinner gathering, kind of a celebration thing in someone's home. And I got a call as I was going through the door, an offer for work, something I'd interviewed for, a couple weeks before. He's so good. His timing is impeccable.
We usually say something at the end to our audience. I wonder if you might say that. We've only got about 1 minute. Look in this camera, and what would you tell people right now about God?
I would trust Him implicitly. You can give Him the reins of your life and expect that He will do the right thing. You may not understand in this life, but just go with it because He is the best boss ever.
Amen. Lynelle, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, for your time and your attention here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Join us again for another exciting Country Wisdom.
See you next time.